I'm Amelia Dalgard, and I am here with Henrik Fisker, the founder and CEO of Fisker. Henrik, I'm so pleased to be speaking with you today. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's great to be here, Amelia.
Your company there's so much happening with Fisker right now, right? We've just seen the Ocean come out. We've seen a lot of announcements, we see a lot of movement. And I see changes on the website. As the company is creating this really strong identity, I wonder if you can talk me through what makes Fisker unique in the EV market.
Well, when we kind of really kicked Fisker Inc. off and sort of finalized our direction, back in early 2020, we really thought about, does the car industry really have to be the way it was the last 100 years, or is there a different way to look at everything within the car industry? And when you think about it, you think about designing and developing the car, you think about manufacturing the car, and then you think about how do you get that car to people in their hands, and which is the entire customer experience. So what we did was we really tried to look at every single aspects in that value chain and see how could we, if there was a way to optimize it, or is there something we should just leave alone because it works very well. And we actually found there was a lot of possibilities for what we think is optimizing that entire value chain in every single part of it. And it also comes to the product itself. Focus our vehicles in areas where I think that there's sort of not been a lot of talk about it. And that is, the emotional connection between the driver and the car going to electric. And if you think about what is it that really ultimately connected all of us with the car, a lot of that was, in my view, that we felt that we were mastering a piece of machinery. It was us, the driver, that controlled that machine. We learned how to master it. I mean, remember the first time you learned how to drive, you learn how, if you did a manual, how to shift gear, the clutch, or you learn how the sound was when you did a kick down, and it accelerated through the gears, and you were mastering this giant piece of machinery that ultimately could kill you if you weren't able to master it. But now we're moving into a situation where, the machine is a robot and it's going to master you. And I don't really like that idea. Secondly, when we did something in a car, and I'm talking about, 20, 30 years ago when they were very mechanic, you felt accomplished. You made some sort of you turned the car or you shifted the gear, and there was a sense of accomplishment because usually there would be a noise, there would be a vibration, there would be something happening that showed that you had accomplished something. Mm-hmm. When you now look into electric cars, we are losing the vibration, we are losing the gear shift or the sense that anything happens when you move forward other than it goes really fast. When it comes to the sort of mastering the machine as we go into ADAS, and I'm not one of the believers we're going to have cars without steering wheels in private people's hands anytime soon, but with all these different ADAS technologies, which helps us drive, it's really becoming the machine that's mastering us than the other way around. So one of the things we're spending time with at Fisker is to figuring out, even though we have this advanced machinery, can we still make it feel like you, the driver, are in charge? And can we still make it feel like a sense of occasion? Can we still make it feel like a sense of achievement when you did something? So that's what we're working on. And we're not quite ready to tell that story because we don't want to give it away to all our competitors, as we don't really launch the car until end of next year. But we're spending a lot of time in that. And part of that, what enables that is actually technology. but we are treating this technology in a different way, where we want to make the driver and the owner of our vehicles feel like they're in charge. And we want to make them feel like there's an emotional connection with the vehicle. And we want to make them feel all the things I've just talked about. So I think that's a big differentiator to Fisker. And we have many others we already have stated. We want to, our aim is to make the world's most sustainable vehicle. We have a person, head of ESG, that came from a pretty known company that working on how do we quantify that. It's not something we can do today. We have a lot of work to do. We believe we can get there. And we do need to quantify and explain what does that mean. So that's another thing. And of course, there is the design and the features we have in the vehicle as well, which I think is really different. So we can talk about details about that as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's just really interesting to hear you talk about that emotional connection with the vehicle, because I think most of us in the automotive media are enthusiasts first, right? And it's hard for us to connect often with EVs because we don't feel that connection. And I know it's been a hard thing for me. Like, it doesn't make noise. Like, I can't. There's going to be no clutch. Like, where's I mean, torque is only exciting for so long. So it is really interesting for you. It's comforting and fascinating for me to know that the man behind an EV company is an enthusiast, right? Because that should change the way the vehicle is realized.
So of course, we all love cars. I love cars. I'm a car guy, and so the product is king. That's number one. But I think that I'm not sure the automotive world needs just another car company. I think you have to do something special, not only with the product, but also with the company itself. So what we do different is we decided that for us, and maybe I'll start with what we didn't want to be. We decided that it was not important for us to prove to the world or show to the world that we knew how to manufacture cars, or we could learn how to manufacture cars really quick. That somehow seems to be, the way the automotive world just found itself, because it's very expensive to make factories and every car company have one. So why would any existing car company decide not to manufacture the car? It didn't make any sense. But however, we don't have a manufacturing plant. We don't have skilled workers. We don't have, people who's done this for 50 years. And I've been, fortunate to have started a car company once before, spent a lot of time in the car industry and know how difficult it is. So we decided we do not want to manufacture our own cars, at least not at this point in time. Would we do it maybe in 5 years or so? Maybe. But at this point in time, we decided no. So I think that's where we really differentiate. We kind of took what I would call the Apple Foxconn sort of model, where Apple is not manufacturing their own products. What we were interested in is focusing on getting really emotional, exciting, differentiated, sustainable vehicles to the customer in high quality. That's number one. So with that in mind, we made our first partnership with Magna to manufacture our vehicles. And I think everybody here know who they are, so I don't have to explain that.
Speaking of which, the Ocean. So you launched the vehicle in the fall, right? I don't remember the exact month, but it's beautiful, obviously, because that's what you do. That's always what you're known for. You're that guy that makes those spectacular cars. But what was really interesting to me was the business model around it. Like, there's this lease there's a lease program, and I get 30,000 miles a year, and I can pick it up wherever I want, and I can return it wherever I want. And I told this to my husband. I was like, and he was like, no, it's not. And I was like, yeah, it is. No, you got to look. So am I getting that right? Where's the fine print? What is this for real?
So let me back up and kind of, there's a couple of things behind that. Yes, you're fundamentally right. You don't even have to pick it up. You order this vehicle like you order when you buy a vehicle. And by the way, you can also buy a Fisker. You don't have to.
Got
it. The lease model is that you can lease a vehicle, and obviously there's different price range depending on what option package you take. But the idea behind this lease, first of all, came from the fact that I got a couple of children, and they're both in the driving age. Fortunately, and it's interesting, my daughter is a super car fanatic and spends more, I think, on her car than her monthly rent, but she probably has that from her dad. My son, you know, he lives in Chicago, loves cars as well, but doesn't have a car because it's really difficult and annoying. And, you know, you have to do a 3-year lease, and what if you move and all this type of stuff. So looking at, I mean, that's of course my own kids, but just looking at other young people, you know, today, I think their freedom device has become the phone, because you can call a car with your phone. And it's become the most advanced technology that younger people have. It's not anymore the car. It may become again, but right now they don't feel that. That's number one. Number two, you know, there's so many other things they want to spend money on. And I think we kind of have a new generation, which I call the non-committal generation. They don't like to commit to anything. So that's why you see all the ride hailing and renting this and Airbnb and that whole generation. And we thought about, you know, what other way can we offer to that generation to get access to electric mobility and get into a vehicle? Because it's not, I think they don't like cars, they don't want it. They just don't want that commitment. So we came up with this flexible lease where you can lease the vehicle and you can give it back anytime. That's the number one thing. Now, that only works because you're not entering into a normal lease program where you are on the hook for this car, and if you give it back, you now have bad credit and all that, and it's financed by another party, and it's going through a dealer, and all these type of complicated things. The way we're doing it is we own the vehicle, so the fleet of these vehicles. So when you lease our car, you pay a down payment like you would everywhere else, and let's say it's the cheapest version is $3,000 and $379 a month. So of course, if you give this car back after 2 months, you're going to lose your $3,000 down payment.
Right.
So we don't expect that most people will give it back after 2 months just for the fun of it, because they lose $3,000. And if you do it, we're pretty happy because we just got $1,500 a month for a car, right? We don't mind. Now, why does that work for us? Because when you normally give a lease car back, that vehicle doesn't get leased out again. It goes to an auction and gets sold after 3 or 4 years. In our case, when we get the vehicle back, we fix it up if it needs to be fixed up. And then we send it out in the field for a slightly lower price. Now imagine we do that for the entire life of the vehicle, which could be 12 to 15 years. We may have 10 different customers that over these 10 years not only pay the monthly, but they also give us 10 down payments. They may be low and low and lower, but ultimately it makes business sense if you can get it financed. And the reason we can get it financed is because we are not financing the MSRP. The MSRP, when you go, let's say on a $50,000 vehicle, you have to get that financed. And as soon as you drive that vehicle off the lot, the vehicle is worth probably 20, 25% less. So let's say about $37,000 to $40,000. If you default after a month, the bank just lost $10,000. That's why it's so difficult for startups to get lease financing. In our case, that vehicle, which is, let's say 50,000, I'm going to use rough numbers, it probably cost about 35 to 38,000 to make this car. So all we are doing is we are financing the cost of the car because we own the vehicle. So even when you drive out, unless you default immediately, and let's say we couldn't lease it out again, the value is still going to be, you know, get back to the bank because we're selling it then for 38,000, and that's what it costs to finance it. So that's again a different thing that nobody else has done. Now you can say, why has nobody else done it? Well, sometimes good ideas just has to come at the right time. But I would say there's one other stepping thing here, and that is you cannot really do that with the current dealer model. So the only way you could do it is if you don't have dealers and you have unique financing. The other problem is that those companies who are, you know, let's say independent EV makers, they may be able to do something similar, but you also have to fit the entire business model behind it. And the fact that we are asset-light company, we don't add a lot of cost to each vehicle. So every car company, the more people you have, the more money you have to put on top of each car to pay for these people. So the more money you put on each car, you can't finance that with a bank. So, you know, there is a couple of reasons here why we're able to do this lease. And why are we giving 30,000 miles? Because we are going to create a very unique program where we believe that most people will not do 30,000 miles, but it's going to make you feel comfortable. Just like it makes you feel extremely comfortable that you have 300-mile range, but you probably will only use it once a year, and you could probably do without it. But there's just things, people like to have 1,000 horsepower. People like to have shit. They can go 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. But most people just like excess without really needing it. So, but the fact you can offer it, and there might be some using it, I think is a great thing.
I think it's fantastic. And you're right. When I think about that, I think freedom. Like, where am I going to go?
It's
makes
freedom.
me want to go place. Yeah, that's interesting. So can you talk to me about, you talked a little bit about the future, but what can we expect from Fisker in the next 3, 5, 10 years? What's coming up? What's up your sleeve?
So, one of the things that we have sort of laid out as a very strong sort of product vision is that we want to have 4 vehicles on the road before 2025. So to do that would be sort of a record for any startup, considering our first vehicle comes out in the next year, then we have another 2 years to get another 3 vehicles to the market. Now, what that means is we cannot do what a few others have done, where you first bring 1 vehicle to the market, and then you go, hey, that is pretty cool, let's do a second vehicle. Because if you do that, that would take you about 2.5, 3 years to get the second vehicle to the market. So if you do this in that sequential mode, it just doesn't work. So that's why people are wondering, well, why is Henrik already announcing a second vehicle? He hasn't even come up with the first one. Well, if I wouldn't start the second one, unfortunately, the second one would be 3 years later than the first one. So after we launch the first one. So my first vehicle then would be end of 22. And then in best case scenario, if I start the next vehicle after that, my next vehicle will come out in 2025. And we don't want that. We want these vehicles to come out much faster. So to do that, we have to start, of course, now to do our second vehicle. In fact, the third one, which we have started. So we are already working on the next couple of vehicles. So what's part of what's next for Fisker is that we're going to launch, we have already announced our second vehicle, which is a very unique business deal we have done with Foxconn. And the objective here is a very different one than the Fisker Ocean. And I think it'll be a very, very radical vehicle, which I think we are willing to sort of take that risk because we would have launched the Fisker Ocean at that point in time. We would have revenue. So this vehicle is setting some even higher goals than the Fisker Ocean, but just more in terms of reinventing certain things within the car industry in terms of actual product and also in terms of cost.
Right. It's so interesting talking to you because, I talk to a lot of executives, and I always get the impression when I talk to you that there's just, you're a pretty straightforward guy. And I know that I appreciate that. And I know that you have also been a big advocate for truth in journalism. We're just about running out of time, but I was told you have an announcement for us and particularly for the Motor Press Guild. So you're going to tell me what it is? I
will. We're announcing a scholarship for young people who wants to get into automotive, journalism. And it's just something that, I'm pretty passionate about. It's not something that I go out really and talk a lot about. I try to stay away from politics and a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm here to make great cars and sell to anybody. But one of the things that kind of bothers me a lot is you don't anymore know where you can go and get at least just decent, correct information. I grew up in a world where any newspaper you would buy would pretty much be, you could trust them. I mean, you may not always agree, but you could kind of trust. But we live in a different society today, and I think it's very cluttered. And I have kids that are growing up, coming home telling stories they thought were true, and they just aren't. Yeah. I mean, they're not even like 0.5% true. So it would be great to see more journalists, coming to life. And I think automotive journalism is something that, of course, automotive is my heart. So I just want to support that. I'm really an advocate for, of course, free speech and a ton of news, but I'm also really an advocate for people who do some research and care about the truth and care about getting the right information out. And that's why we want to support this.
Well, that is truly tremendous. And I know that the core of MPG membership will just be amazed, because I know that so many of us feel the same way, even if you're not a straight up journalist. I think we all feel the need for just better quality journalism. And so I thank you, just from the Motor Press Guild, I thank you so much for that generosity and for thinking of us and making that happen. It's truly tremendous. And I've just had a great time talking to you today. I wish we had more time, because there's so much to ask about what's happening at Fisker, but I am really excited. And I just want to thank you again for your time and generosity.
Thanks, Amelia, and thanks for everybody who joined in. Hope to see everybody in reality soon.
Yes, amen. All right, take care.
All right, take care.